Stranger Things is a show about things that are stranger than normal. By that, I mean it's about a psychic autistic girl who becomes friends with a group of losers, and they work together to stop evil monsters from an alternate dimension. What a lot of people don't know is that this show was only meant to have one season, and after seeing everything that came out after the first one, boy does it show. Stranger Things was originally meant to tell self-contained stories once every season, but with how well the first one did, the big heads at Netflix demanded that the show must go on, but not in the way the creators wanted. Wow, you made this really successful show, we love it.
Wow, thanks!
As a reward, we're gonna give you less control over it.
Wait, what?
Yep, you've proven to us that you know what you're doing. That's why we're gonna tell you what to do from here on out. They wanted the characters to stay the same for season 2, and for it to continue from where it left off. The creators didn't really plan for this, so they had to come up with new monsters, new plot lines, and try to explain things that weren't meant to be explained. Don't get me wrong, the creators are somewhat at fault for the decline of the show, but Netflix deserves most of the blame. Who knows, maybe if Stranger Things kept on telling original stories every season, it would have gotten even worse. But we will never know. Let's do a quick little recap of season 1 and why it worked so well, before we get into the other seasons and why they didn't work so well. The first season came out in the best year of all time, 2016, which was 9 years ago. God, I feel old. The context of this year is important because Game of Thrones was still good, and just about everyone loves superhero movies. This was a year when the right wing was saying feminism is cancer, and not get woke go broke. BreadTube was just starting, and Trump was ready to get in office. It was also a year studios were making high-budget TV shows, mostly doing a lot of weird sci-fi and fantasy stuff. Netflix at this time was dominating the streaming world. Stranger Things was just another show to them. It didn't have that much advertising behind it, and Netflix didn't seem to have much faith in it at all. But when the trailers for the show finally dropped, people still didn't really care all that much. But then the show finally dropped, and in just a few days it took over the entire platform of Netflix, up to the point that to this very day it seems to be the flagship show of Netflix. At least when it comes to live action shows. The show was created by the Duffer Brothers. Originally it was called Montauk. Wow, that's a bad name. No wonder why no one was picking this show up. Episode 3 and 4 of every season are directed by Sean Lay, the guy who directed the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. If you've been living under a rock the last few years, then it should be clear that Stranger Things is greatly inspired by 80s media, mostly Stephen King novels and Spielberg movies. But the initial inspiration came from a 2013 movie called Prisoners. It's a mystery movie about a parent looking for their missing child. The show is very well edited, giving its own unique style. The music of the show gave it a very nostalgic feeling. The people who made the soundtrack really know what they are doing, even if it was for a show that most people didn't think would work. The casting, despite being full of kids that the show relied on, worked. Child actors for most of movie history weren't that good. I don't know who is training them, but they really should be getting raises. The pacing of the first season never felt like it was going too fast or too slow. It didn't feel like I was watching an episode at a time, but a fun 8-hour movie. It sucks that over time the show became more of a mess. It became what I like to describe as Hollywoodized. But before we get to where it went downhill, we need to talk about why Season 1 worked so well. Despite being full of different characters, each one feels fleshed out. They all seem like a real person, and all of them are given just the right amount of screen time. There's 3 storylines that all intersect with one another. There's the kids who learned their friend went missing. Around the same time, they found a little girl who has psychic powers by the name of 11. Then we have the teenagers who are dealing with their emotions and looking for their friend who also went missing. Then you have the adults who are trying to find the kid of one of the hottest TV moms of all time. All 3 of these storylines easily work because they all have the same goal. Despite the sci-fi elements and superpowers, at its core the story really is about a small town looking for a missing kid. It's kind of like how Harry Potter without the magic is a mystery story. Most people want to make their own sci-fi or fantasy story, but to make one really good, you have to make a good story without those things first.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then later on you can add the cool stuff in. The story also isn't about saving the world, or the town, or anything like that. It's all about saving a kid and stopping one monster. I've said this before, but people care more about characters than planets. Andor blowing up didn't affect us as much as Kenobi's death. At the very beginning we're introduced to the main cast of 4 kids playing D&D. After it gets late they all head home, but then the youngest kid, Will, starts to get chased by a Deathclaw from Fallout. Will crashes his bike leaving it behind and runs home, but no one is home, not his mom or his his brother. Luckily, this is America, so the kid runs to get his family shotgun. Yes, every single American family has one of these. But then the monster teleports next to him and uses instant transmission to pull him inside the Upside Down. The Upside Down is a creepy parallel world. What is this place? Why does this monster want people? Why do kids love the taste of Cinnamon Toast Crunch? All these questions and more will not be answered in this season. His overworked hot mom doesn't learn that he's missing until the next day. She tells the police chief Hopper that he's missing. Hopper thinks it's nothing important. After all, this is a small town where nothing ever happens unless he exists in a horror movie.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Unfortunately for him, they live in a horror TV show. Over the season, she feels more and more powerless to find her son. However, even when a fake dead body of her son is found, she doesn't give up hope. She starts to believe in the supernatural, and she can't tell if she's going crazy or not. Everyone is treating her like she's crazy, but she never gives up hope. The plot around her character is great. I just hope they don't end up reusing it over and over again. Jonathan, his older brother, took an extra shift at work the very night Will went missing, despite his mother telling him not to, because if he did, his brother would have been home alone. Now that his brother is missing, he blames himself for his disappearance. He was already a friendless loner, but now he feels more powerless than ever before. But just like his mom, he doesn't believe Will just got lost or was kidnapped because he took a photo of something that didn't look human. He teams up with the older sister of one of Will's friends. She also feels guilty because her friend Barb went missing after she hooked up with a jock. Yep, she picked dicks before chicks. Then we have Hopper, the chief of police, who's a drug addict. He does drugs because he's dealing with the loss of his daughter. She died of cancer and now he's divorced. His wife moved on and she will not be important to the story, so just forget about her. But Hopper, on the other hand, never moved on. Losing his child broke him as a person. At first, he didn't really give a rat's ass about the missing kid, but over time he looks into things more and more, turning him more into a detective rather than a police officer. He's an angry guy, but you can tell that he's a good man at the end of the day. He starts to learn that some company is trying to cover up what happened to Will, and that something supernatural is happening. Will's three best friends are Lucas, the black kid, Mike, the white kid, and Dustin, the this kid. We've seen this trope done in 80s movies a lot. The smart kid, the fat kid, the black kid, the main kid who is always the most boring, and the girl. But all of them are kind of the smart kid. Lucas butts head with the other kids a lot. Dustin is super funny and Mike is, well, he's boring. They are told not to look for their friend by the police chief, but they do anyways, and they find an autistic girl. She has Jedi powers, and she showed up at the same time when the monster appeared. I want this video to be short, and you really should check out the show for yourself. But to spoil the ending for you guys, Eleven sacrifices herself to take out the monster. Will is saved, but at the end, it's shown that Will is still connected to the Upside Down. Just about every main storyline of the plot is wrapped up, but most questions remain unanswered. If the story ended right here, this would have been one of the greatest shows of all time. The problem is, it didn't stop. The story had to keep going.
Why?
But if the story was going to keep going, questions would need to be answered, and if questions are answered, then the mystery will vanish. Every season after this one has to raise the stakes, and when you raise the stakes more often than not, it makes the story worse, not better. Bigger doesn't always mean better. An army of monsters will only be a little more scary than one super powerful monster, because the power level of the army of monsters will have to be lowered in order for our heroes to win. The Demogorgon's power level was already all over the place in Season 1. One minute it's taking on a group of guards with guns, and in another minute, it's struggling to fight a kid with a baseball bat. Season 2 can best be described as boring. It wasn't bad, but compared to the last one, it just wasn't the same. That being said, it didn't make me fall out of love with the series or anything like that. In some ways, it's actually a pretty good follow-up, because it builds upon what was previously established. The tone is still the same, and it doesn't escalate things too much. Season 2 takes place almost exactly 1 year after Season 1 ended. There's a giant Lovecraftian shadow monster trying to take over Will's mind. Eleven didn't die. She just went into a different dimension for a little bit. The feds are still after her, so she's living with Hopper in his old father's house. This is the first problem with the season. Eleven doesn't interact with the other boys all that much. They are all weaker characters when they aren't working off one another. Separating her from them was a dumb move. The other problem is Will. He didn't do much last season, and he doesn't do much in this season either. The monster possesses him. And if you are wondering as to why, good for you! Will draws a bunch of stuff and his mom puts it together. See, it's like the Christmas lights thing from season 1, but a lot more over the top. I will say the possession is done well, because you can't tell if the characters are talking to Will or the Mind Flayer pretending to be him. They lock him up in a basement so the Mind Flayer doesn't know where it is. But unfortunately the phone rings, and the Mind Flayer recognizes it, so it tells the demi-dogs where to find them. Not gonna lie, that's pretty awesome. Nancy does stuff this season, I guess. Dustin gets a baby Demigorgon that he raises as a pet. It does one thing near the end, then dies. I feel like you could have written it out and nothing would have changed. Dustin is a kid, I get that, but any kid would think that they should get rid of something after it killed their mother's cat. Steven becomes a much better character with his redemption arc. Too bad he gets the shit kicked out of him every season. He builds a bond with Dustin and they really work well off of one another. We get a tomboy introduced to the cast, by the name of Max. She also has a really mean older brother by the name of Billy. He's alright here, but he gets weird in season 3. Max is also alright. She doesn't do all that much in season 2, but she doesn't hurt the show. We also get Bob, who is dating Joyce. He's a nice guy who used to get bullied, and I knew for a fact as soon as he showed up that he was going to die. He seemed like he was going to be a twist villain at some points in the story, but this show wasn't made by Pixar, so I knew he wasn't. But then we have Murray, and Murray is a character that you will either love or hate. He's a conspiracy nut who was hired by Barb's parents to find out what happened to her. He's a comedy relief character who isn't that bad in season 2, but he becomes more and more marvelized as the show goes on. The demi-dogs are weaker demigorgons, but there's a shitload of them, so they make a good video game enemy. But then we have the worst episode of season 2, episode 7, The Lost Sister. 11 goes to the big city on her own. She meets one of the other numbered children, number 8. And she can make illusions. 8 tries to get 11 to become an anti-hero, but 11 says no, and goes back home. Wow! That was pointless! This episode felt like filler, you could take it out and nothing would change. The show itself acts like it never happened later on. Apparently, this was meant to be the start of a spin-off show, but it clearly didn't work.
Using one of your episodes to create a spin-off show? I gotta do that myself!
The season ends with the reveal that the portal to the Upside Down wasn't closed. In fact, it got bigger, but now it's underground. Will is exorcised, they stop the monster, and the kids go to the school dance. The Mind Flayer is still alive, but it's locked out of our world. There's some stuff about Eleven's mom being lobotomized, and how 11 got her powers, but we didn't really need answers for that. Season 2 overall is an okay season, but the character development is the best thing this season has going for it.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Season 3. Season 3 is when the show became a Marvel show. It stopped being a dark show and turned into a show where everyone was joking around. I want to make it clear that I don't hate this season, but it is bad, at least in comparison to the last 2. It feels more like a parody of Stranger Things than anything else. Season 1 was about a missing child. The second one was about a possessed child. This one is about a secret Russian base built under a shopping mall. Also, unlike every other season where it's a mystery that you slowly discover as it goes on, this one reveals the mystery to you at the very beginning, and you get to watch our main characters discover it for themselves.
What? What the fuck?
Wow, that's way more lame. The first 2 seasons work without the supernatural stuff. As I said before, the sci-fi elements were there to enhance the story. The story of Season 3 doesn't work without the sci-fi stuff at all. The Mind Flayer is raising an army of zombies so he can create a fleshy body in the real world. Not gonna lie, Russians and zombies are kind of a downgrade from demigorgons.
Well, duh.
The Russians are the bad guy because it's a thing that happens in 80s movies. Yep, they're only the villains because, well, that's a thing that happened in 80s movies. At least the Mind Flayer possessing a group of people and using Billy as its main vessel works. Even the body it gets at the end is cool and creepy, mostly due to the fact that it's made of human flesh. But the Russians are just so out of place. By the way, we never find out how they got here or how they're pulling all this stuff off. As I said before, Season 2 wasn't that good, but the characters saved it. This time the characters not only don't get developed, they get undeveloped. Most of them don't even need to be here.
What the hell is this?
Mike and his family are irrelevant to the story. Jonathan is now Nancy's sidekick. Nancy is now a badass who uses guns, and that's about it. She has a new job that is totally male-dominated, and all of her coworkers are sexist towards her.
Women.
This will lead to nothing because all of her bosses die.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Yep, they set up a story about women overcoming sexism, only for all the men to die. Dustin and Steven team up with a lesbian girl to take down the Russians. No, I'm not joking. This is such a stupid storyline and it doesn't fit in the show at all. And yes, all the characters are well aware they're in a show at this point. Anytime something bad is happening, they just joke about it. Like it's a Marvel movie or something. Lucas's sister is now a main character, and she's annoying. She has no character arc. She's just there to be a sassy little black girl, and that's it. That all being said, Steven and Dustin still work very well off of one another. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but the lesbian girl was a great character to add to their dynamic. But overall, there's just too many characters now, and most of them don't do a lot. Joyce has been right about everything for the last 2 seasons. That being said, back then, people didn't know she was going to be right, so they had every right to treat her like she was crazy.
Women.
But when she's right for the 3rd time in a row, people act like she's crazy, even though she has proof this time.
It's so dumb.
Joyce notices that the magnets at her store and at her home aren't working. She shows this to Hopper and he acts like it's no big deal. Bro, magnets losing their power all over town is a big deal. Speaking of Hopper, he goes through the same story arc he went through in the last 2 seasons. This is something that happens a lot in long-running shows. A character will learn something, change as a person, and the fans will love it. So the writers do the same thing, over and over again, thinking it will make the fans happy when it just makes them upset. Hopper is now an 80s action hero. Sure, he was always kind of badass, but not to this level. He turns into a cartoon character. He's no longer a person you can relate to. He even gets his own villain to fight against, and it's the Terminator. No, he's not just a robot.
He said it! He said it!
But he's clearly based on the Terminator. He also has a romantic plotline with Joyce. Wow, that seemed to really come out of nowhere. To be perfectly honest, they just seemed like really close friends in the first 2 seasons. But now all of a sudden they want to get married and have a family. The romance between them just mostly involves them screaming at one another. Never mind, they seem like they're already married. But the point I'm trying to make is that season 1 and 2 were about the characters. They did what they could do to keep the characters consistent. Season 3 is not about that. It's about making callbacks to the 80s, and forgetting all about character development.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Worst of all is Mike. He went from the main character to a background character. 11 is just a superhero with no more development, at least in this season. We also have Dustin's girlfriend, who gets him to sing a song as a monster is chasing everyone. It's almost like one of the boys could have done what she did, and you could have written her character out of the story entirely. Also, all of these people who died in this small town are just covered up by the government somehow. Only 2 people went missing in season 1, and that had people looking into things because one of them didn't come back in season 2. How did dozens of people vanish and the government covers it up when they couldn't do the same for 1 kid?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, Hopper's death did get me at first, but after thinking about it for a day, I knew they would bring him back. Billy redeems himself out of nowhere, and then he dies.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
I do like the idea of him sacrificing himself in order to redeem himself, but there was also no build-up to this. Season 3 can be summed up as a Marvel movie wearing the skin of Stranger Things. I was not the only one who felt this way. The writers listened to the backlash, and they did what they could to fix Season 4.
Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on!
Not gonna lie, I, along with a lot of other people, liked this season a lot. At least at first. It seemed to return to form, and the new villain was cool. Tons of people said this season is what made the show good again. But after watching it over for the 2nd time, I saw that it had a lot of problems. There's a time skip where all the kids are starting high school, even though they all look like they should be getting ready for college. Lucas is into basketball because, of course, a black kid does that.
That's racist.
Dustin and Mike are back to playing D&D because they are white losers.
That's racist.
Max is isolating herself because her brother died. Yes, he was an asshole, but he was still her brother, and he did save her right before he died. So of course she misses him. Will and 11 are living in California. 11 no longer has her powers and she's getting bullied. As for Will, he's just there. He does nothing this season at all. Everyone else is living a normal life and having fun, or not having fun in some cases. But then a cheerleader is killed in a brutal way, and the new character, Eddie, sees it all go down right in front of him. He knows that he's going to get blamed for her death, so now he's on the run. At the same time, Hopper is in a Russian prison. Of course, he's trying to find a way to escape and get back home. Joyce finds out that he's alive because she solves another puzzle.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And yes, this puzzle is even more complicated than the last one. Eleven gets kidnapped with Will, Jonathan, and some hippie. This is not a small-scale story anymore. It's the biggest and longest season yet. In some ways, that's a good thing, but unfortunately it's coming off the heels of Season 3. One issue that this season definitely has is that there's 17 main characters now.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Seems a little overkill for a live-action show. If I wanted this, I would watch anime, or something by VisiPop. Because there's 17 main characters, a lot of them have been tokenized. 11 is a girl with superpowers. She doesn't develop anymore. She acts like a scared lost girl like she always has. Nancy is just a badass girl. She's like the woman from Alien. Along with Hopper, he's also just a badass and nothing else. The characters of Jonathan, Will, and Mike are just completely flat now. They have even less depth than the average JoJo's Bizarre Adventure side character. He has a stoner friend who's just there. Dustin is just a goofball who makes everything into a joke. Yeah, he was always the funny one, but at least he had other character traits. Same with Steve. Don't get me wrong, Dustin and Steve together are absolutely hilarious, but that's all they do this season.
But Char, Dustin does cry at the end.
Really, that's it? Okay, fine, he's a jokester 99% of the time, and 1% of the time he's sad. But at least it's better than what Robin got. She's a completely different character now. She's now like super neurotic for some reason, and the joke with her character is she just can't stop talking. Oh god, they put me in the show! As I said earlier, Max's character at least improved a lot. Watching her pushing everyone away dealing with her PTSD really shows what someone dealing with loss has to go through. But I'm not gonna lie, she should have died at the end. It would have hit really hard and it would have been a great send-off to her character. I'm just expecting them to do nothing with her in Season 5. Eddie is a new character that was introduced this season and I immediately knew he was going to die. But how did I know this? Well, it's because he was a very likable guy. You know how Season 2 and 3 also had really likable characters that they introduced only to kill them off? Yeah, I knew they were gonna do the same with this guy. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But you ain't gonna fool me a third time. This season also introduces a new bully character, Jason, and I'm gonna be honest here, he's the best bully character we've gotten yet. Mainly because from his point of view, he's 100% justified in his actions.
From my point of view, the Jedi are evil!
He was the golden boy of this school who was dating a cheerleader, and then his cheerleader girlfriend wound up dead. Because he's a good Christian boy, he immediately jumps to the conclusion that this was done by D&D players, the most evil people in the world. A whole bunch of really hardcore Christians hated Halloween, D&D, and later on they hated Harry Potter and Pokemon. Trust me, my mom was one of these people, I know what I'm talking about. Honestly, it's kind of funny picturing a hardcore Christian being terrified by a nerd. Oh wait, you don't need to picture it because that actually happened. I, to this day, do not understand how this became Christianity's biggest concern for years. But I'm getting off topic. In all seriousness, this is not the most creative idea for a story, but the fact that it can actually happen in real life is quite concerning. He's doing whatever he can to stop the heroes, but he's completely 100% convinced that what he's doing is the right thing. He believes that he's fighting against the people who murdered his girlfriend and that he's saving his town from the devil, when in reality he's helping the guy who killed his girlfriend and bringing the devil to Hawkins. But of course, this new character is not our main villain. The actual main villain is this other new character, Vecna, aka 1.
But what about 11's dad?
Oh yeah, he shows up and dies again for like the billionth time. Hopefully he actually stays dead this time. Now Vecna is a villain that I'm a bit conflicted on. On the one hand, I like him because he actually does something. He has a pretty cool design, being a mixture of Freddy Krueger Voldemort and a Mirelurk King from Fallout New Vegas.
He's out of line, but he's right.
And unlike the Demigorgon, the Demidogs, and the Mind Flayer, he's by far the most human. I know, shocking, the monster that looks like a human acts the most human. By that I mean he's a person who actually has a goal in mind. He's not a force of nature or a wild monster. The Demigorgon and the Mind Flayer work as one season-long villains, but for a long-running series, you have to have a villain like this. Compared to all the other villains we've gotten so far, he's actually quite unique. But I do have some issues with Vecna. Number one, his backstory. Basically, he was a kid who had psychic powers, and he didn't want to follow the rules of society, and that's about it. Okay, there is a little bit more to his backstory, but we'll be getting into that a little bit later. My other issue with Vecna is that his power level is inconsistent. Just like how the Demigorgon could take on a whole bunch of soldiers, then struggle against a teenager with a baseball bat, or how the Mind Flayer could possess a whole bunch of people, but then when it only had to possess one person, they turned against it. Vecna can easily kill people from an entire dimension away, but then he'll struggle to kill someone when they're right in front of him.
But Char, it was because Max was listening to music. That's Vecna's one weakness.
Oh really? His one weakness is music? What? That's the dumbest weakness I've ever heard. And I'm a guy who reads DC Comics. And do you know why the Demigorgon struggled against a teenager with a baseball bat? Why the Mind Flayer struggled to control Billy? And why Vecna struggled to kill Max? Well, it's because all of these villains are no match for plot armor. Now, don't get me wrong, plot armor is in just about every single story ever made. But the problem is, these characters who have all this plot armor don't do anything in the next season. Max technically does get killed by Vecna, but then Eleven comes in and says, lol, no. And she comes back to life. The Duffer Brothers were advertising that there was going to be a body count this season. And the only characters who died were Eleven's dad for the second time, a cheerleader they just introduced, and a D&D guy who listens to Metallica that they just introduced. I guess a few Russians died in the background as well, but they're background characters. And let's be honest here, 90% of you only know the cheerleader girl's name from the Jesse Wake Up meme. I wouldn't mind characters not dying so much if they at least did something in the next season. They could have killed off Jonathan in Season 3, and Season 4 would have been the same. But now we're getting into my final complaint about Season 4, and it's that Vecna's backstory completely ruins the Stranger Things lore. It's not Black Zetsu from Naruto bad, but it's still pretty bad. So it turns out from the very beginning of Season 1, Eleven has memories that she locked away. Wow, that's not the most obvious retcon of all time. Eleven was bullied by the other numbered children, but then she's befriended by this guy who tells her about the first number, number 1, Nigel Uno. No, I'm joking, it's actually him, which everyone could obviously see coming. And since number 1 was introduced in the exact same season Vecna showed up in, yeah, everybody could connect the dots that number 1 was actually Vecna. Number 1 was adopted by Dr. Brenner, but he quickly found out that number 1 was too powerful, so he put a chip inside of him to block his powers. Yeah, apparently he just had one of those lying around. Don't know why he didn't kill number 1 if he was so powerful and dangerous, but whatever. Number 1 manipulates Eleven into taking out the chip, and then he kills all the other numbered children. Yep, after the failure of the Lost Sister, they had to write off all the other numbered children somehow. 1 tells Eleven to join the dark side, but she says no. So he tries to kill her, but then she unlocks Super Saiyan. Eleven opens up a portal and sends number 1 through it. Yes, this portal does lead to an alternate dimension. No, this alternate dimension is not called the Upside Down, it's called a Hellscape. It's a dimension between dimensions, and it would cause number 1 to look like this. But eventually, Vecna fell into another alternate dimension. And no, it's also not the Upside Down, it's called Dimension X. Vecna comes across this life force that he eventually forms into the Mind Flayer. A few years go by and Eleven opens up another portal. This new portal somehow creates an exact copy of the town of Hawkins. And this is how the Upside Down is created. You confused yet? Yep, the amazing origin of the Upside Down is that Eleven accidentally created it. And then Vecna filled it with monsters. Now I know what you're thinking,
but Char, according to this one person who worked on the show, that's not how the Upside Down actually was made.
Yeah, it turns out not all the showrunners actually agree on how the Upside Down was created. Also, the Mind Flayer is not controlling Vecna, or working with Vecna. The Mind Flayer is actually controlled by Vecna, and he's been behind everything all along. Yeah, you see why I compared this to Black Zetsu now? At first I kind of liked this twist, but then after thinking about it, I realized that Vecna's plans from Season 1 to Season 3 makes absolutely no sense at all. It's almost like the Upside Down was never meant to be explained in the first place. Earth was being attacked by monsters from an alternate dimension that didn't know how humans worked. But it turns out they were being controlled by a human. You know, someone who understands how humans work. The lore of this show is now completely inconsistent, and it's clear that the writers are making stuff up as they go along. If I wanted a story like that, I would just go watch Dragon Ball. Even when our main characters do go into the Upside Down, they don't come across any demigorgons or demi-dogs or even the Mind Flare. They come across, I don't know, demi-bats and demi-vines? Oh, and if you're wondering how we learn about the backstory of Vecna, well, he just lore dumps onto Nancy. If you're wondering as to why he does this, good for you! Oh yeah, and throughout this entire season, there's another side storyline about saving Hopper from Russia. It's kind of just awkwardly shoved in, and it doesn't really connect to anything else. Not gonna lie, every time they cut to that story, I felt like I was watching a completely different show. It turns out the Russians have their own Demigorgon. If you're wondering as to how they got it, good for you. Here's my ending thoughts. Stranger Things is a good show. No show is perfect, and of course it's gonna have a few flaws. But the biggest flaw is that there was just too many chefs in the kitchen. The writers were only planning to make one season with a concept that they didn't want to explain, and it was amazing. But then, it just had to continue, and the big heads at Netflix got involved a little too much with it. I do think Stranger Things is a good show, but it could have been a great show. Who knows, maybe season 5 will fix every problem I have with this show. But I highly doubt it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider donating to me on Patreon so I can increase the budget of these videos. Anyways, let's get to the credits.